Hey folks, I thought I'd put together a video of how to go about the whole animation process for the self-propelled bouncing ball. Just because we kind of had to go through it fairly quickly in class, it's nice to be able to pause and look at stuff and have it be a nice quality. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of repeat what we did in class. Again, maybe this is useful to some of you, maybe it's not. Use as you will. So I'm going to start off from the very beginning, just going ahead and opening the file. So the Chasm Ball base version 5, that gives us this. It should open up into the camera that's locked off. You can see the lock button right there. You're required to keep this position as is. You can press Alt B to change the background color to a more preferable color that works for you. It's up to you. To get the ball in here, I'm going to go to File and Create Reference and click on that ultimate ball. Let's see, I think, which is a my ASCII. You're not seeing it here because it's on my binary. If I go to my ASCII, or it's actually really annoying that my does this, or just Maya scenes would be a nice default, you'll see it. So there we go. There's the ball. The first thing we need to do is we need to double check. We need to set the ball up where it's going to start. So I'm going to, regardless of what animation I'm going to do, you'll notice if I spacebar out, I have the camera, but I'm missing the perspective view. To get that in here, just go to Panels, Perspective, Perspective, or if you want to be a little bit more of a hot shot, hold in your spacebar, click right in the middle, and then choose Perspective View. That way we have a place to move around and a place to see what the animation is going to look like. You'll see this super mover on the ground. It has directionality. It's pointing this way. We want to make sure it's pointing the direction the main part of the animation is going to go. I'm going to hold in J as in Josh, and then go ahead and rotate. Oops, didn't work. That should be a snap rotate. There we go. So I can just rotate it to 90 kind of easily. I don't know why they chose J. You can technically change it, but I just gotten used to it, kind of. So I'm going to move this outside of the frame because it does need to come into the frame to start. I'm going to have it jump a little. Actually, that's a pretty good starting point. You can have it be closer, give you a little bit less space, or farther, give you a little more space to play with. It's kind of up to you. Obviously, closer is going to make it dominate the frame more, which might be fun. But you give less room to work with. So this is kind of a nice in between. So there we go. I'm going to go ahead and save this out as a new file. So I'm going to save this out as Chasm Video Test, save, and now I'm ready to start. Now the first thing we want to do is take some time to think about what we want to have happen. Remember that we're trying to think of a couple character traits for our ball and trying to think of specific actions that can show those traits or demonstrate them to our audience. Once you decided on those, you want to either look for some reference or jot down some ideas, but ultimately you need to figure out what the specific actions are and what the timing is. In this case, just to keep things short and simple for me, I'm not going to go crazy in this. I just wanted to show you the basic operation, the process. But I'm just trying to reiterate that it's important that you come up with a specific idea and then try to block it out. In this case, I'm going to have, as I was showing in class, I'm going to have the ball jump in happily. So a nice big leap, a little bit springier and fast. And then it's going to do a double bounce to come to a nice stop. Maybe skid to a little bit of a stop. So he's, again, a little bit more spunky. And then is going to kind of loom and look in to the chasm. So that's what I'm picturing. It's good to kind of like write out the moves if you want, or if you want to storyboard or draw them. Something just so you have a plan of action. You're not just animating randomly. There'll be plenty of randomness as you go, but you want to try to get it down to some basics. You have are some basics in terms of the structure and the moves that you're going to do. You can definitely play it as you go to some extent. We have a sense of ball timing from our basketball, bowling ball, and beach ball, and have a sense of different personalities and types of bounces. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm blocking it out. When I block out a motion, what I do like to do is just take a guess and try to get things more or less the timing I think they're going to be, and then I'll go back and adjust the timing until it gets to what I want it to be. So that'll be our first step of the process. In terms of the overall steps that we're looking for, it should look something like this. Oops, sorry about that. Trying to make it look a little bit nicer, but failed. So the steps we're looking for are, first, we just did this, come up with a character and an idea to communicate that character. So again, 2 character traits and 2 things that would communicate those traits. Time out the performance in some way, either sketch it, storyboard it. Either way, you guess at your timing, or even better, grab Animate or another stopwatch. Maybe just time it out in your mind and then write down those numbers. Just the major movements. Then we're going to key in those major movements. It's really important in this phase, and I'll show this in just a minute, that we only want to put in the keys that are necessary to get the major movements. Everything else we're going to ignore and try to avoid doing. You don't want to clutter up your graph. That leads in the next step, which is fixing the graph. Again, if you have less keys, the graph is easier to fix, which is why we don't want to clutter it with too many. Then we're going to go back in and add in in-betweens, especially for the squash and stretch. I'll put that in there too. Squash and stretch. And then fix the graph from that, and then keep kind of cycling through, adding in in-betweens and fixing the graph as necessary. So that's kind of our basic process here. Here we go. So remember that this guy here, the super mover, is just for placing the character in the scene. We're not going to animate with it. It also has some other functions there, including changing the look of the ball. You could get rid of that stripe if you don't want it. I'm going to leave it in there. I would avoid probably most of these other ones. The checker is not bad. That has some character to it. But these, the bowling ball, beach ball, all these things also suggest a type of character that you're going to have to work with if you use them. You can't ignore the suggested character there. So I'll just keep it basic. But more importantly, I need to make it off. So I'm going to hide it so I don't accidentally keep keying it. We want to avoid putting keys on that super mover. All right, so really importantly, when you start, you want to grab all your controls. In fact, every time we set a key, we want to key all the controls. This will seem unnecessary and kind of annoying, but will make a huge difference later on when you are trying to fix and work with your graph, and especially when you hit the in-betweens. Remember that all the major movements from the ball are going to happen from this root control, which they call control main. It's usually called the root. Right now I'm having trouble selecting that slider, but remember, if I can highlight it in any view, like my perspective, I can use my middle mouse button to grab it virtually and pull it into the shot. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this in. I should change my frame first. I think my first bounce, I'm thinking about the basketball, and which is about 18 frames for kind of a big bounce. I'm going to drop that, make it a little bit faster, and put it at 14, and then drag it back in. It's going to land here. I want to give myself some room to play. We're thinking about our composition. I'm going to go ahead and grab these 3 controls and key them again. So the first bounce will be like this. Notice that I just went ahead and keyed it on the ground. It's really easy after this just hit frame number 7, and then I can add the height there. So I'm going to say about this high. And again, this is a major key. I'm going to go ahead and press S to key it in there. So it's going to be ugly, but we'll have our first bounce in there. You can go ahead and play it back right away and see if you like the speed of it. If you're like, that's a little faster than I thought, or not fast enough, remember, we can go in here. There's 2 ways to do this to change the timing. I can go ahead and grab the keys by holding in Shift in the timeline and selecting a section. And then from the middle here, I can make it smaller or shorter or longer by pulling it in different directions. If you want to just do one at a time, that's fine too. Remember though, do not grab here and pull. That ends up putting your frame on a frame that doesn't exist and will cause you tons of problems. If you do that by accident, you'll see I can't click on that frame anymore. The only way to get to it is by pressing comma or period to jump to it. So now this is frame 15.33. The way to get this back where it should be is to grab your keys, right click and choose snap, and it will snap it to the closest key. But it's easy to forget that, and you can just create a huge mess for yourself. So do yourself a favor, don't use that stretching capacity of Maya. Now in this case I happen to like my timing, so I'm just going to keep going now. So first big bounce, and then we're going to do a second, two smaller bounces for the guy to come to a stop. So I'm going to say for the next two, they're going to be about 6 frames. I'm just guessing. I can change it later. So we're going to slide using the middle controller. So 1, and then key everything. Press S to key everything. And then 2. I'll make this one a little bit smaller too. So it's slightly bouncy ball like. Actually, no, maybe I'll do the full 6. Move again, just not as far. And then I'm going to add a big squash and stretch there to kind of do the finish, the follow through. Oh, I somehow, see, I already screwed up. I accidentally left these. I didn't select them when I did the snap. That's from the other controller. So I'll try snap again. And then I got to fix them again. Again, this is what happens every time. It's just the most annoying feature. Let's go ahead and, I need to add in my bounce. So let's see here. So the next bounce will be right here. So not as high. Again, select everything, press S, and then same thing here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That looks wrong. All right. So this one will be a little smaller. I'm not worried about getting this just perfect because I can go in the graph editor and fix that up. I guess this one isn't quite right. There we go. Let's see what that looks like. It's kind of hard to look at because it's not really bouncing right. You know, we don't have the right graph. It's not doing squash and stretch. But you're just trying to kind of keep this just rough and try to just feel it out and see if you're getting the feel you're looking for. I kind of like this actually. I might do a little bit more spunky on this one. So just move this up a little bit. I like that better. Now notice I'm not using the auto key here, and that's because when we're doing the major keys, we don't want to accidentally start putting keys where I don't want it. Right now, if I were to go into the graph editor, window, animation editor's graph editor, you can see this is pretty clean. There's not a lot to take care of. I can see immediately there's the 3 bounces. It's not cluttered with tons of keys. The only one currently that has too many keys is this line, and I'll get rid of those in just a minute because that definitely isn't doing what I want. It's starting out slow, speeding up, and taking a long time to slow, but then stops on a dime. Not really what I'm looking for. Although stop on a dime, I could play with a little bit here. We'll see. So that's my first move. I like what I got. Here, I'm going to add in a squash and stretch, but I'm not going to do it yet. That's going to be part of my next phase. Right now, I just want to get the major moves. And here, he's going to kind of squash and stretch as he comes to a stop. And I want to pause. I want there to be a sense of thought. In this case, I'm going to do a little bit less than 24 frames. So a little bit less than a second. For a good period of time for thought, we're looking at somewhere between probably no less than 8 frames for the most part. And anything above, well, I guess you can think as long as you want. But go too short, we're not going to buy it or notice it. So 8 frames is about minimal. I'm going to do like 15 or 16. Again, I can change this later. So let's just go to 40. And all I'm going to do to kind of put in this pause here, I'm just going to have, here's this pose. I'm going to just do the same pose here, but 16 frames later. So it's just going to hold that pose. You can add in stuff in here. Let's give us a little time for squash and stretch, but right now that just is feeling right to me. Again, you can pull a stopwatch and just like time it out in your mind, which is a good way to kind of figure out how long things might take. And now the character is going to anticipate down, which I am going to add in this time because it's definitely part of the move. And he's going to lean forward to look in here. Maybe at the stretch at the top of that, he's going to kind of scan back and forth a little bit. So here we go. I'm going to guess about an 8 frames anticipation. So I'm going to grab this top here and push down, and I'm going to push back a little bit since the character's going to push forward to look. So down, back. Actually, or I could do, you can even play with, try the move out. So in and forward. I like that. So we actually will go straight down, maybe a little bit of a lean forward, as opposed to the character coming back and then going forward as if it's going to jump or something. So in to about here. Again, I'm going to key everything because it's a major move. And I don't know how long this is going to be. Again, I could time this out really quick with the stopwatch. I'm going to guess to right about there. And again, I'm going to key everything. So down and up. Let's go ahead and play that and see how it feels. Ooh, I like that. I think I could play with this curve a little bit or make it a little faster or slower, but I think as of right now I'm liking how this feels. You can think about the pause. It feels a little bit long to me, but if I add in the squash and stretch for the landing, that's going to eat up a little bit of this time, and then the pause will be shorter. So again, you should note that trying to make changes later to your timing overall is much harder. So if you see something that's a problem, fix it now. It'll be much smoother process for you. So we have the character looking up. I'm going to go ahead and add in a little bit of extension up here. So I'm going to add an extra 10 frames or so where the character is going to lean a little bit harder into it. Really small move there. Let's see what that looks like. It's probably going to look a little weird without messing with the graph. Yeah, we get this kind of extra like stretch on there, which I like. And then it's going to pause again, like around 8 frames. And then the character is going to kind of look right and look left. Let's try that out. I can't really do it from this view. I want to see the character like go like this and scan back and forth. Maybe again, you can kind of play with it in real time. So I'll look left, look right, and then I could time this out. Look left. Like, do I want them to look back and forth, or do I want it to be look left, pause, look right, pause? I think I like that better. So again, I need some more frames to play with, so I'm just going to make that 200. And again, the character's kind of snappy, so I'm thinking, what do we got, 78? Let's try a short one. So you don't want all your timing to be exactly the same. It can get boring really quickly. Again, key everything. I'm going to do a little bit of a pause, so just hold there, and then look the other way. This one's going to have to be a little bit longer since they're looking the full range, not half. So first half was just this, but this time they're going to be going all the way over here, so a little bit longer. Maybe even drop a little bit, just for some variety. Again, another pause. And then the character is going to return to their previous position. So a little bit slower on this one, just for variety again. So I'm just going to zero that out. And that's going to be too much. Well, I don't know. I can bring them back to here. Maybe I'll try it neutral and just see how it feels. Great. Let's go see what that looks like. Here we go. Don't like it. So to me, that's a good start, but that's the last part's too fast. Even though it's supposed to be funky, I want them to be thinking. So to me, this is just not enough time to think. I think that, yeah, this is a little bit too fast, and then the beat's too slow, and this is too fast. It's all too fast. Well, I don't mind the speed of him coming down. I can actually make that a little faster. I'll fix that now. So I'm going to grab all the controls, make this a little bit faster here. Alt-V, by the way, is the hotkey for pause, or for play and pause. That's not bad. I think I can go even faster. Just for that last move when it comes back down. Yep, that's a little spunkier. For this part, I could fix it here. I could also fix this with the graph editor. I'm going to show you that, since I haven't shown you that yet. Now here, this is kind of tough to see, but each one of these things is a major key. You get used to some of the patterns, which is nice. We can actually see the look left, pause, look right, pause. So it's kind of nice to see that graphical representation. How did I know that that was look left, look right? Well, that's the only thing I really did in this section. And so I'm looking for major graph movement, and this is the one. If I couldn't find it there, I could also just find out which control I moved, which was this one, and I mostly moved it in the, well, I guess I thought it was the Z direction, so that's actually a little weird. It's clearly saying it's the X. You can also move the controller and see what you're doing. And sure enough, it is moving the X. This is probably because this is showing the world axis. If I double-clicked on the translate and then turn this to object mode, there we go. Now I can see this is the X. So that was a little confusing. Sometimes you want world, sometimes you want object mode. So here, that's what that's representing, so we can play with that. We can even do cool things like, how it pauses? Well, instead of just the pause, we could make this spline. And now it's going to actually curve through that moment instead, so it'll be more of a continuous movement. And if I want to get a little fancier, I could even kind of flatten this a little bit, so it's not quite so, well, there we go. So this will be a nice continuous movement. Let's see what that looks like, just for fun. Not a huge difference. All right. Part of this, part of animating is just being playful, is trying to feel this stuff out. So anyway, let me just show you really quick, changing the timing here. We did it in class, but I want to show you again. Going to grab all the controls. Remember, when you're doing the graph editor, or when you're doing your major keys, you want to move all the keys together. So I can hold in K and drag through here to see what's going on in this view, or you can click up here. Both are fine. I use K a lot. So the first move I thought was a little bit too fast. I'm just going to press W for translate mode, hold in shift to lock it to a horizontal or vertical axis, and then middle mouse button drag to give myself some more time. Same thing here, give myself a little bit more pause. A little bit more time to go the other way. And a slightly longer pause here too. You notice I'm going in this dark area. That's just where the current animation ends. If I were just to extend this, you'll see I can see it just fine. I can also at this point, since I know I like the beginning part, I could shorten this up so that I'm just looking at the section that I want to see. And you can also use, if you put your cursor up here, you can actually grab the end of this for your range and play with it directly. Let's see what we got. Whoa, man, do I not like that. What did I do? It looks like I did something weird here. Let's do a little bit of debugging. I might have moved the wrong part. I not only moved the wrong part, if you'll notice, this key isn't keyed across everything. So when I change my timing, neither is that. What did I do? When I changed my timing, it didn't grab the entire pose. And so as I shifted different parts around, oh, I know what I did. What I did is I changed the pose. And you want to keep your poses the same. I'm going to put that all back. I'm kind of glad I did that. So the idea here is I put in poses that I like. But if I start shifting different parts of this graph around, it's going to change the pose. Obviously not that part. So as I shift this around, it's changing my pose unless I grab everything together and then the pose stays locked. So that was my mistake. Let's try again. I'm going to grab all these keys here. Give myself a little more time. This is the thought part. Give myself a little more time. A little more time for the move. A little more time for the final thought. And now let's check it out. Oh, I actually want a pause in there. I'm not crazy about it moving the whole time. So I'm going to go ahead and flatten that out. So we have a definitive pause for the thinking. Same thing here, definitive pause for the thinking, just by choosing flat tangent. I'll shrink this up again so I don't have to keep watching it. Maybe from right here. Okay. That's much better. Somehow I'm missing the ending though, so let's get that in there. Maybe just a little fun right here too. I feel like it's kind of dry as it pulls back. I'm going to actually, I'll show you guys how to copy properly later. I'm going to choose copy and then paste to get the same pose. And I'm actually going to add in a little bit of anticipation in the same direction, just for fun. Let's see what that looks like. Look right, look left. Oh man, that was pretty subtle. Oh, because I forgot to key it. Should be actually using this guy here. Now it's messing with me. All right, let's try again. It's okay. If you want to get things to be more interesting, we can add in some arcs and stuff, which I'll show you later. Maybe I'll start them coming back at least a little bit. And I keep making the mistake of moving it and then not keying everything. You might have noticed that took a while, and a lot of that's because you're constantly trying things, testing them out. It's not just a matter of like fixing the graph and you know it's going to be better. You have to kind of play with it and try to massage your way into the look you're looking for and the feel you're looking for. The more you do this, the more you practice this, the more you'll have a better sense of timing automatically. You'll have more, a bigger bag of tricks to pull from to try different things. You'll see something in a movie, you're like, oh, this would be fun to play with here, and you'll just go ahead and do it. Or at least kind of a sense of how you might approach it. So that'll come with time. This next part, though, it can be kind of tough to tell what's really working or not without the graphs working, especially like, this bouncing at the beginning. I'm having a much better time now kind of seeing this or ignoring the fact that it looks bad because I like my timing overall. But there's things I can play with in here that can make this a lot more interesting and give it a lot more life. It's not going to really feel like fully alive, though, until we get that polish pass on with the in-betweening. Okay, that's in-between, really, not polish yet, where we'll have a bit more fun. Let's go ahead and do the graph really quick. There's parts of this we know by heart, and parts of this we're going to have to kind of play with a little bit to see what we're going to try to get. You don't need to do graphs on every single control. Some of them don't have things that need to be attended, but I'm probably going to anyway, just to make this a little easier and just to make sure I haven't missed anything. So here we go. I'm going to go ahead and open up the graph editor. I should mention too that once I'm done with this, it might change the feeling of the timing enough that I'm going to go back and want to change the timing again, which is totally fine and absolutely normal. It's part of the reason why we're doing this. So for the first part, I'm going to go ahead and just like we did with our regular bouncing balls, I'm going to just isolate this. If you're not sure which one you're looking at, you can just swipe through all of them. You can always grab a curve that you don't know which one it is, and then you'll see it highlighted over here. Then I can just press A. But all I really care about is this first part. So I'm going to grab this and press F, and it'll rescale it to fit this window. Make this a bit bigger. This is where it's great to have two monitors. You can put your graph editor on one monitor and your main views on the other one. I'm just going to go ahead and delete these curves because I want this to be a smooth transition, or these keys, sorry. And just like we did before, I'm going to, normally we pull this out for the realistic balls, but since this ball is under its own power, I'm going to bring it to a stop, but I'm not going to do it over such a long period of time. I do want, as it's coming in, for it to be moving in a linear fashion, meaning it should be moving at a constant speed, and then start slowing down. So I just know that from doing so many ball exercises, just like you guys did last week. This will be a traditional ball bounce, so I'm going to make these broken tangents, and then I'm going to make them linear. Not that I'm going to leave them linear, but this is just a faster way to get them closer to where they're supposed to be. On top, these should be flat, and they already are. So now I just need to adjust my curves. I do have weighted tangents on. Oops. Curves, weighted tangents, and currently they are on by default, so I don't have to turn them on and off for every curve. So like this. If you want, you can give it a little more hang time, like give it a little more spunk. At some point, and this might be the assignment to do it, it's fun to play to see like more hang time, less hang time, more, higher acceleration into the bounce, or you can do anything you want. This ball is on its own power. And it does change the feel quite a bit. When you're watching your favorite Pixar films, this is exactly what people do for hours, is play with the curves to see like how they can get a cooler feel to the overall movement. So let's get I'm going to go for a little bit more hang time here. You can also grab this top one, shift, middle mouse click, and pull it out to easily get more hang time there too. All right, let's see how this feels. It's just the first 3 bounces here. That's pretty cute. The third bounce is getting small enough that it might start to feel a little bit weightless, but I think it still has enough character in it to make me buy it. So I'm going to keep that. I like that. If this doesn't happen the first try for you, not to worry. That's normal. I'm only doing it this way because I'm used to it. I'm comfortable. We could play with the curve here to see if maybe a faster stop might be more fun, or we could play with a slower one, but I thought that looked pretty good, so I'm going to leave it. Anytime you can't see the whole graph, just press A to zoom all. All right, and then I'm just going to watch and see what I want to change here. So this move here is kind of all one move, so I want that to be probably spline curves to keep that smooth. And the only question is, do I actually want to lock completely on the look around, or do I want to keep that moving too? So for that section, all I'm going to do here, I think I don't have to worry about this curve because it's not doing anything. It's flat. So I'm just going to leave that one alone for now and just kind of concentrate on this section. I'm not going to delete this either though, because I can create issues later on when we're in betweening. So I'm going to leave all those keys in there. That's really important. Maybe a more swooped in kind of feel here, a little bit higher acceleration might be kind of fun. This is the section here. Sorry we can't see all this at the same time. I'm trying to jam it all into this kind of small recording screen. Again, going to hold in K. So this is the move up to here. And then it kind of comes to that stop here. But I think what I'm going to do actually, I'm going to delete this key. I'm just going to have this be a really long slow out. That's going to be my pause there. And then these keys here, I'm just going to hit spline. They already look pretty good, but I'm just going to hit spline here. And that will give them a little bit more smoother movement. This could be a problem though. It's going to move past my target. Let's see what this looks like. So this should be nice and smooth. So big acceleration in, up, and then it's going to pull back a little bit probably. And then pause. Let's see if I like that. I'm not sure if I do. Yeah, I want him to keep his neck out. So I'll just fix that by hand. I'm just going to grab this curve and keep it from going past that other position there. So just dial that back a little bit, and now they should hold that pose a little bit better. Yeah, there we go. Maybe even more. I think I like that pause back in there, so I'm just going to put it back. So bring those keys back. Where are they? There we go. This was my actual pause right here, which I took out. I think I need it. But I might go ahead and spline there. Let's just look at one of these and see what this looks like. So if I were to zoom in on this, you can see what's happening. I'm just going to grab these 2 points and press F. So it's a perfect hold here. I want the hold to be right here. So I'm going to pull this up just a little bit. So it keeps moving until it gets there. And then maybe I'll spline that a little bit. So it's just going to, ooh, that's ugly. It's just going to keep a little bit of movement as it goes into this pose. Just a little tiny bit. And all I know here is the shape of the curve. I want it to kind of come to a stop almost, but just keep a little bit alive in there. This looks bad. I'm going to have to fix that later, but for right now, I'm not going to worry about it. Let's see what that looks like. Yep, that I like. So just a little bit of life there on the end. You guys don't need to go that particular, but I just want to show you what an animator would actually do to kind of get the right feel. We have this pause right in here, and then the character's going to look the other way before they come back down. So same thing here. There's a little bit of funkiness. I'm going to just dial that to something a little smoother, but otherwise this is fine. And then here, just a little bit of movement here to keep it alive. So when he looks over to this side, right there, it's not totally dead. Cool. I could add in a little bit of bobble there too, which could be nice, but I'm not going to worry about it at this point. So I want to make sure you guys get the main idea here. This last part, I really want this to kind of go into more of like a fun curve, but I'm going to add that in the in-betweens. For right now, let's just see how the whole thing feels. Right, left. It's probably a little slow. The actual look right, look left, I'm going to overdone it. And I could go back in the graph editor and then go ahead and fix that. Let's see here. Nope, actually I like it. I like the difference in speed there. It makes them a little more curious at that moment rather than just spunky. So fixing the graph, it turns out I like my timing. Anything I didn't, I could change it up again. It should keep the new graph settings, and I'd be good to go. At this point, I'm ready for in-betweening. Now in a traditional sense, the playing with the graph is doing in-betweening, but in 3D, we don't think of it quite that way. In-betweening is a process where we're adding additional keys, not so much just playing with the graph. But the graph does change spacing and is really critical to getting the right feel. So we kind of have an extra step in 3D, but it's also an extra tool set to make your in-betweening faster. In this case, the in-between we're going to be doing is playing with that squash and stretch, adding in an additional level of detail on this top, and if necessary for some of you, the bottom control. But most of you probably will just be using the top. At this point, I'm no longer going to be keying everything. I'm only going to focus on the control that I care about. If I need to make a little adjustment here, fine. I'll just adjust that control. If I want to adjust this one, fine. You just adjust that one. And at this point, it's probably a lot easier to go ahead and turn on your automatic key. So you can just worry about positioning, not worry about keying all the time. Some people like more control, will be pressing S. Some people like the kind of more naturalistic feel of it just automatically keying for us. I would definitely save at this point before you in between. There's a reasonable chance, I'm going to say keys done. There's a reasonable chance here I'm going to do something I don't like that I can't undo just because I can't get back to where I wanted to. And it'll be nice to have this as a base point in case I screw up. All I'm going to do for this part is I'm going to go through, I'm going to try to like aim for in-between keys or critical points to define what I want the in-betweens to look like. And I'm just going to focus on the squash and stretch guy. I do want to think, in this case, my character is spunky and fun, so probably more squash and stretch. If you're doing like the old grandpa, unless they are drunk, well, maybe a drunk would be more squash and stretch. Or if you're doing something that's more rigid and like a sergeant, then maybe you do less squash and stretch. You do want to think about how it affects our feeling of the character. But this guy's fun, so I'm going to have fun. Typically for squash and stretch and bouncing ball, the first frame off the ground always has stretch. You want to be careful about your squash and stretch always resolving at the very top. It starts to make your character feel kind of gooey. So it's kind of better to reset it before you hit that last key. So I'm going to go to here, a couple frames before, and zero it out. Actually, let me take this out and let me see if I can show you what that looks like. So goo up and then goo down. So the frame before it hits the ground, you're going to want to have it. Sorry, I'm having some weird issues here. It will not let me step through the frames, which is making my job very difficult. Okay. Sometimes just clicking on the control again will reinitialize the keys or the hotkeys. So on frame 13, the frame before it hits the ground, I'm going to go ahead and stretch it back the other way. So notice again, it's stretching out to the full extension from that top pose, and that tends to feel gooey. It's not bad actually in this case. Sometimes it just feels awkward, but in this case it's pretty good. If you want to get rid of that goo feel, just zero it out a couple frames before the peak. And then hold that for a frame or two. Nuts. That's what's happening. It's getting lost up in here. Hold the full pose for a couple frames before you let it start gooing down. And that'll kind of help get rid of that gooey feel, which actually I do like better here. Make sure to point the stretch in the right direction. Now when we hit the ground, you want to immediately go to squash and stretch. Now how far you go also is really important. If your character's doing a lot of this, it might start to lose its sense of form or weight. So you want to be a little careful here. And don't forget Alt, Alt period allows you to watch it frame by frame. So you can kind of get the right amount of squash and stretch. Don't scrub through here so much. I mean, it kind of works, but it's also, it's not as fast to keep coming over here to keep checking it, because I can actually check, move, check, move on the fly. So in one frame, it's going to go from stretched to squashed, and then right back out on the very next frame. Now this is a much smaller jump, so I'm not going to go crazy with it. Again, the frame right before it hits, going to stretch it back the other way. This might feel super gooey. You can see it kind of sticks at the top. But I'm going to try it first and see how it goes. Again, the contact frame, you immediately want to squash it. And the frame after the contact frame, you immediately want to stretch it. Now in this case, I stretched it so far, it stretched past the next frame, so I'm overdoing it. I want a feeling of continual movement up. And again, a little bit of stretch on the way down. I'm just trying to feel it out here. Like if you scrub through it, like are you getting the right feel of the ball? You notice now that I no longer have these nice spaced out frames. I have frames all over the place. This is where it can get kind of messy, and it's also where the graph editor isn't so helpful anymore. So I'm not going to play with the graph in here. It's just too much of a mess, and I'm almost controlling it on every single frame. So that's not going to really help me. It's these big broad expanses where you want to be playing with the graph editor, and these small ones where you want to be Alt period and watching the movement on frame by frame basis. I am also going to add a little squash and stretch finish here. So a little bit, nothing as dramatic as the first ones. Squash. And then I'll do 3 frames up with a little bit of stretch. Then 2 frames down. and 2 frames back to 0. And this time I'll just type in 0. Cool. Let's see what that looks like. Pretty fun. I like it. The timing overall is still maintained. I do feel like I'm probably stretching a little bit much in here. So I think I'm going a little over the top, even though I like it. This might be a place where I adjust in the graph editor because I'll be able to see it pretty easily. It's the translate Y on this. It's doing most of the work. So we can see stretch, squash, stretch. Yeah, and I can see that this one's a bit more extreme. I'll just lower that down so it's not as dramatic. I felt this one was a little bit dramatic too. It should be like easing down. I didn't really add much on there because I guess I couldn't. Again, I'm just going to kind of even these up a little bit. And maybe tone these down too. If it's really hard to see, just grab a chunk of them, press F. You can get in a little bit closer. And here I can kind of ease it back out visually so that it's kind of working its way down to less. Let's see what that looks like. That's way better. I don't know if you guys can feel the difference, but I like what I'm getting. Cool. So that's kind of how this works. You're going to add in those in-betweens. You can clean them up either visually or up here on the screen, or you can use your graph editor to make changes. And there, again, doing something a little more technical allowed me to kind of have more control over how it was going to look. Now, some things you might want to have fun with, like here, between this key and this key. Actually, I like this to be kind of straight, but I was thinking on the way down, well, let's just have some fun. When this comes in, I could go ahead and add something that feels more like a curve. So maybe he comes down first and then swoops up. Which I kind of like the way that looks. Except for he does stretch at the end, which makes that a little bit awkward. So maybe here, I'll pull him forward a little bit here, a little bit earlier. So he's, I think this is not going to work with that little stretch at the end. I'm feeling like he swoops in and over and then moves that way, which is just awkward. So I think I'll just concentrate on the swoop when he comes back. So he's going to here. This part I'm just going to leave straight as it is. I could add in another inflection, like maybe he comes over here, pauses, and then does a little bit look down, but I'm just going to keep it simple. But when he comes back, we have that little anticipation. I'm going to try bringing him over to create more of an arc in this direction. So he comes over. It's almost like he's hiding. Let's see. Or I could try it the other way. So maybe he goes up and then he swoops this way. So he's going to create an arc down and in. I don't know why, but that cracks me up. So I'm going to leave it. I could also add a little follow through in here. So maybe, and actually here, let's fix the graph really quick while we're at it. So I'm going to go in here at the graph on that one little move. So it's going to grab the curves, press F. Note here, I'm just grabbing this top one. I don't care about the others. So let's grab those last few. I do have some weirdness in here. So yeah, so in this case, because my tangents are stretchy, I'm getting some weird, oh, it's these guys. These guys are stretched too much. So it's good for, it's probably not good for either side. I'm just going to grab these and pull them in so I don't have that weird jaggy right in the middle of the move, and it keeps it a little bit smoother. And I can also play with what that slope is going to look like. This one is a little bit funky. That one looks fine. So this should give me a smoother swoop into that space. And if you want, since it comes in and kind of stops on a dime, we can add a little wobble or something there at the end. I'm going to save this just in case something happens. But I'm pretty happy so far. Almost done here. So think about what kind of finish do you want. Do you want them like, maybe like, I'm going to turn this off for a second so I can play. Maybe he like swoops down and back, pause, and then wow, back and forth, wow. Or maybe he just comes back and squashes back into place, something a little simpler. All a little fun. So he's going to come back, and then here. So it's going to come past where he wants to be. A little bit of a break, and then he's going to sproing back and forth. So I'm just going to guess about 6 frames back. I'm going to try to keep him kind of ball shaped. 5 frames back. 4 frames the other way. 3, 2, and actually 1's probably a bad idea. Let's do another 2. Let's see what that looks like. It might be terrible. Well, it's not bad. I think it needs to do it a little faster. Like the little pause. And you might need another movement back the other way. And I'm going to speed it up a little bit. In this case, I'm just going to work on this control. I can see just from the motion it's going to be the translate Z, but if you're unsure, you can click on your control and check it. Yep. So I'll click on translate Z. I'm just going to grab this end and press F to zoom in. It's getting even closer. And I just felt like it was a little too slow. So I'm just going to take off some frames. Especially this guy. I think this one was too slow for sure. And all these can be flat tangents. Looks like there were anyway. And let's see what we got. That's better. These might need a little bit more time. I might be pushing it a little too hard. Let's see. That's better. If you go too short on a movement, it's likely to start to feel short enough you're going to lose a sense of weight and believability. So you can't go too short, you can't go too long. Too short feels weightless, and so does too long. Great. Let's see what the whole thing looks like. For this show, I'm going to go ahead and go to my viewport and turn off NURBS curves. Well, Alt-1, who knew? And turn them on and off at will. That's great. That way I can watch it without the extra. So playful all the way through. We're getting a good sense of character here. By the way, if you want your shadows on, just go to lighting and turn on shadows. Depends on your video card. Some video cards won't be able to handle it. Some will handle it just fine. But it's a nice way to get a good sense of the grounding. Sometimes I'll find that people don't even know their character was never on the ground. Great. At this point, looking back at our setup here, we've gone through all the steps. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. We've gone through all the steps. And then if you realize like there's something else you want to change, or maybe there's something else you want to play with in terms of the in-betweens, maybe there's a point, press Alt-1 again. Maybe there's a time that you want to play with this, or you want to add in some movement here. You know, maybe as a character goes, I don't know. maybe on one of these jumps you want to play with something. But I'm liking how this is looking, so I was able to do it in one pass. I, of course, have a little more experience, but you just want to keep working through it and keep making adjustments until you go all through it. But notice, until you get all the way done. Notice, however, that my nice, pretty graph that just had a few keys on it now has keys everywhere. And trying to play with parts like here or parts like here with, by changing the timing gets a lot harder. I can change the amount of time between here and here, but changing the amount of time between here and here becomes much more difficult because you have so much more going on. So that's why you want to make sure that your initial pass with the blocking and the keys is as close as you can get something that you like, and it will translate through to the rest of the animation. So good luck, have fun, take your time, make it work on the first, make your timing work on that first pass. Make sure it all sells there, you have good clarity, nice pauses for thought, and then the rest is all polished and we'll make it look great. Good luck.